They say witches don't float. In colonial Virginia, that counted as a full legal strategy.
Especially if you're a woman with pants and opinions.
No need for evidence, just a river and a rope. Grace Sherwood was a healer and a mother, but convicted as a witch.
You know, for decency's sake.
It's episode 2 of Spookology, and tonight we're following the ripples of a trial that never should have happened. Hey Spooklings, it's me Keek, writer, researcher, chaos wrangler, and your guide to the creepiest corners of the historical record. My mom calls me Nicole, but only when I'm in trouble.
And I'm Cardi. I ask questions, crack the jokes, and occasionally get haunted by my own Google searches.
Each week we're bringing you something strange from the past. True crime, folklore, and spooky history that refuses to stay buried.
If it's cursed, creepy, or just plain weird, you probably have a tab open about it.
Welcome to Spookology, nerds. It's about to get weird, witchy, and a little waterlogged in here. Hey Spooklings, before we wade in on tonight's episode, I have a couple of announcements. We made some changes to last week's drop. I cleaned up some of the audio, I got a brand new mic, and we added our intro. Did you get a chance to listen to that final cut, Cardi?
What final cut?
Of the intro?
Yeah, it was good.
Much better, right? Much more crisp?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Tell us what you think, listeners. I also posted a bonus episode that didn't quite make the cut. While I was editing, there was a lot of funny stuff in there, and it's totally free for members on Patreon, so check it out. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Wah, wah, wah. You like how I have my own sound effects? I can't afford a roadcaster, but I can make my own sound effects.
Bad audience, don't listen. It's okay.
You love it. You love it. All right, spooks and spookettes, let's talk about the roots of a witch. Before she was Virginia's most infamous witch, Grace Sherwood was just a girl born into dirt and skill. She was born in 1660 in Princess Anne County, which is what we now call Virginia Beach. She was born to her father, John White, a carpenter, and her mother, Susan, a midwife. So right from the start, you can see that Grace lived in a house where survival was hands-on. Her father built things. Her mother delivered babies. So obviously she was going to pick up those skills, right? In April of 1680, so she's 20 now, Grace marries James Sherwood. And as a wedding gift, her father gave them 50 acres of land. A year later, in 1681, John White unfortunately died, but he left the rest of his estate to James. That makes Grace and her husband full stewards of their property. That inheritance eventually became a 170-acre farm, which they worked together for more than 20 years. So she's in her 40s now because they had worked the land together for 20 years. They got married when they were 20. That's big land in colonial Virginia.
Yeah, definitely. 50 acres?
Yeah.
Start off with?
Yep. Well, and then eventually a 170-acre farm. So that's huge. Bigger than most of the neighbors. And people definitely noticed that. When James died in 1701, Grace didn't remarry, so she chose not to have a husband anymore. After he died, she was like, I'm not going to get married again. That's unusual as well. People would definitely notice that. She stayed on the land, she managed the farm, and she raised 3 sons alone. This is not something that was going to sit well with colonial Virginia.
Definitely not.
1701, they're like, nah, single moms are not a thing. She worked the fields on her own. She was said to have worn her husband's old trousers, which everybody was whispering about that because women in pants, we talked about that in the last episode. And she was a midwife. She was an herbalist. She grew medicine. She knew how to stitch a wound, when to plant the fennel, and how to get a breech baby out of the womb without losing either patient.
So explain to me, I'm not up on women's pregnancy or anything like that. What is a breeched baby?
A breeched baby is when the baby comes out butt first.
Oh yeah, well I'm good with that. It was like I know they're supposed to come out head first, so that is good. So Butt first.
Yeah.
All right. Got it.
Yeah, that definitely is the wrong end of the baby and much wider than the head.
Yes.
It's pretty dangerous, actually. Sometimes you have no choice but to do a C-section because the baby just can't get through the canal.
I've actually seen or heard of some people, like the doctor, able to get his hand up there and flip the baby around and then just pull it right out.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a thing that was really so in the very beginning of like medicine. Obviously, sticking your hand in a woman's vagina was not going to be a widely accepted practice.
Yeah.
So that's something that midwives kind of developed, that natural solution to a problem like breech babies.
All right.
And apparently Grace was comfortable with it and competent enough that she didn't lose too many patients, you know? She didn't lose the babies, she didn't lose the mamas.
That's good. That's good. And she knew what she was doing.
Right. And then she healed livestock. So if your goat was sick, you'd come to her. Women and animals, it's a bad combination.
Midwives are fine, but them going out to be veterinarians, which I believe there were veterinarians back there where they checked on animals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like midwives, that was understandable. Most midwives were women. I don't think there was ever a man midwife.
Right. Not until modern day.
Her checking up on animals, you don't know. Not in those times.
Slightly too independent. No, yeah. Well, she was pretty dependable, though. I mean, people came to her for help. She was known for her love of animals and how she healed them.
That's good. That's good.
Even though her neighbors needed her, they didn't trust her. Too independent. Did too many things on her own. She knew too much stuff, guys.
But you weren't too proud to go ask her for help.
Exactly. They always called on her when something was dying, but they always kept one hand on the Bible just in case. They said she was helpful, odd, but a few people in town whispered that she was dangerous because she wasn't just unusual, she was independent. And in the early 1700s Virginia, that was enough to get you looked at sideways. Definitely some side eye.
Most definitely.
So she is described in the Encyclopedia of Virginia. You can find it either online as a PDF or, obviously you could buy the Encyclopedia of Virginia on Amazon. But in the Encyclopedia of Virginia, the quote is, "She wore trousers when working on her farm, which was unusual for women at the time. And she treated both people and animals with herbs that she grew herself." Modern sources are going to treat that like a quirky little pioneer moment. They do the modern reenactments today, and they really lean into that. Grace in pants, Grace the healer, Grace the misunderstood folk hero. But back then, that was the whole problem. Her independence didn't just set her apart. It kind of set her up. Over the years, she found herself pulled into at least a dozen court proceedings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at least a dozen.
Damn. These people. But I guarantee you, those people are still using her.
Right.
Even after they got her into the court, like, hey, my baby or my dog or my cat or my goat or my sheep is something's wrong with them. Can you come check them out?
Yeah, they didn't have doctors. So even something as simple as like, my kid has a cough, they'd come to her for her herbs. But then they'd take her to court later on because she was wearing pants on Sunday or some crazy bullshit like that. People would accuse her of whatever weird thing they couldn't explain that week.
Yeah.
She was blamed for bewitching livestock, for ruined crops. And according to one neighbor, she was transforming herself into a cat to slip through keyholes and sneak into locked bedrooms.
Slip through keyholes, people. Keyholes.
Right.
Okay.
So tell us, Spooklings, tell us in the comments, do your cats generally squeeze through your keyholes?
Yeah, please do. Because I would love to hear that.
No? Yep. Just checking. I just want to make sure that I'm not out of my depth here. Apparently, another woman accused her of magically making her gain weight. Because, your neighbor's hips. That's what you focus on when you got magic.
that would be a woman. But does this kind of sound familiar, people? Nowadays, we just call them Karens.
Right. Shut your mouth, Karen. But you know what? People were actually filing formal complaints with the justices. And when somebody came at Grace at court, she didn't let it slide. She sued for defamation multiple times. And sometimes she won. No husband.
That was kind of bad, too.
Yeah. I mean, definitely people are going to get upset about that.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a husband, and she's winning fucking court cases. We don't like this girl. She doesn't know her place. But the most serious conflict began in 1705. Grace sued a man named Luke Hill for assault and battery, which is likely after defending herself from unwanted attention. Apparently, it was pretty violent, according to rumors, but that's not in the court documents. I mean, she was wearing pants. They're pretty exotic, probably sexy. Think she was asking for it?
I don't think pants were sexy back in those days at all.
Oh, well, she definitely was not trying to get that attention, and the court agreed with her. She won the case against Luke Hill on December 12th of 1705. And then 3 weeks later, on January 3rd, 1706, Luke and his wife's name was Elizabeth, they filed a formal witchcraft complaint against Grace. That timing's subtle, huh? 3 weeks later.
You know what it was? Because Grace wore pants, maybe Luke thought, like, hey, this is close to a guy. It was not good to be attracted to a guy back then either. And he found a loophole.
Oh, so he's like, maybe I can get around the rules about men.
Yeah, it was like, just go after a woman with pants.
So instead of ladyboys, he was looking for manly women.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, Luke was in the wrong and he lost his case. And then by February 7th, the Princess Anne County Court had officially begun proceedings against Grace for the practice of black magic. Luke and his wife accused Grace of sneaking into their bedroom in the middle of the night and supernaturally causing Elizabeth to miscarry a baby. So she cursed her womb.
Well, see, that would fall under her because she is a midwife. So it's not a far jump to accuse her of witchcraft because she knew the body's anatomy and stuff like that for a baby. That's why they probably believe it's plausible that she did cause her to miscarriage. That's why they jumped to witchcraft with her.
Possibly. Or maybe they saw a cat squeezing through their keyhole in the middle of the night and assumed it was Grace. It seems on brand.
A cat in a keyhole.
In a keyhole. Because that's apparently what cats do. So now we have Grace. She won this court case against Luke Hill, and then Luke comes back with a witchcraft accusation. He was at fault for the assault and battery, but also you might be a witch. Instead of holding a local trial, the justices ordered a physical search of Grace's body by a jury of 12 women from the town that she lives with. It's a pretty common practice at the time for suspected witches, so they strip her naked and they take a look at all her lady bits. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Probably pretty humiliating, but I think that might have been the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you step out of line, we're going to humiliate you so that you don't do it again. Grace is just a stubborn bitch. She's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yep.
This jury, this is a quote from the court document.
So there was a jury of 12 women.
Yes, from the town, from Princess Anne.
But they allowed a jury of 12.
Right, to look at her body. At least it was women, right? Because in Salem, it was all dudes.
Oh, so it was just looking at her body then. It wasn't like a jury to like convict her, like, hey, you're guilty.
No.
It was just a jury to look at her body. Okay, got it.
Right. Because at that time, it would have just been a council of justices that judged the trial.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a jury as it is now. But they used the jury of 12 women to do the examination. Instead of having a trial, they decided, let's see if there's any physical evidence we can find.
Oh, okay.
And the findings from the court documents, apparently, were, and I quote, 2 things like tits with several other spots, which is what they interpreted as witches' teats, supposedly used for feeding demons or animal familiars.
So just her boobs alone were witchcraft.
Yeah.
Even though she was a woman, she had 2 boobs, so they were witchcraft. So what about the jury? They had 2 boobs, aren't they? They're witchcraft users then? All right.
Well, apparently, these are other little spots besides her boobs. These could have been anything from moles or freckles to pimples or bruises, like from all the farming that farmers do.
Oh, so she grew boobs out of there to feed the demons.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a way of a witch can hide, like a freckle can be a way that a witch hides her nipples.
Gotcha. None of those other women had freckles or blemishes on their body. Okay.
Well, they're not witches. They know they're not witches, right? So.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. The logic of 1700s colonial Virginia.
Yep.
Like I said, that examination was invasive, it was humiliating, and it was inconclusive. The local justices were unsure how to proceed. So they decided to escalate the case. What they did was, from Princess Anne, they petitioned the General Court in Williamsburg for permission to conduct a trial by water. So this was Princess Anne's idea. They asked the bigger court, like, hey, we don't know what to do here. We found 2 little witches' teats, probably pimples or probably fucking freckles from being out in the sun, but we can't decide if she's a witch. So we want to try her by water.
And
they cited, community suspicion and all the alleged quote unquote findings. And the higher court said yes.
the trial by water is.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Got it.
I'm going to go through it right now.
All right.
So, so they officially said, yes, Grace Sherwood is going to face a trial no one had seen before or since in Virginia history. She's the only one. Okay, Spooklings, check this out. Let's talk about this trial by water, okay? It was the middle of 1706, and the court had just gotten permission from the General Court in Williamsburg to carry out this trial by water. It was a method called ducking, and even then it was considered outdated. It was pretty rare, and even at the time, most people thought it was too extreme, most level-headed people. But the court said yes, because when in doubt, go full medieval, I guess. The logic was, I don't know, let's call it optimistic.
It was rare here. So audience, get this correct. It was rare here, but trial by water dates back to the early 1600s.
Oh, yeah.
In Europe.
But by 1706 in America, we're talking about Virginia.
Yeah, so it was more used in Europe than anything else.
So by this time that they're saying, go ahead, try her by water, at this time, people are still like, wait, what? We don't do that anymore. Because this is already like ancient news. They don't do this kind of barbaric shit,
Yep.
But they were going to do it anyway. So, I mean, maybe the pants was the kicker. They were like, fuck it, she wears pants around? Duck her. So the method was called ducking. Check out, this is how they did it. This is crazy. You guys are going to trip the fuck out. They take your right thumb and tie it to your left big toe. Then they take your left thumb and tie it to your right big toe. Then they wrap a cord around your waist and throw you in the middle of a river. The idea is that water is holy and it will reject evil. So if you float, we have a witch. If you sink, you're innocent, but you're also possibly unconscious, or dead, but legally innocent.
Yet most people, as you know, can float. So
well, I don't know, Bacardi. I literally tried touching my thumbs to my toes crosswise. Right thumb to left toe, left thumb to right toe. And I tried to even just waddle. I tried to sit on the ground like that. How would you, without struggling or whatever.
Yeah.
Just imagining being in the water. It's not comfortable. You're hunched over. You can't straighten your back. You can't straighten your legs because your arms are not long enough.
Yeah.
It's really hard to control your muscles. It was pretty. I didn't like the position.
Dedicated to her craft, people. She even tries the things that they torture them with and check if they're witches.
Just checking it out, man. Maybe I like that shit. You don't know. I'm saying this was crazy. This shit was out of this world. It was less a legal process and more of like a theological dare. Can you float? Let's see if you can do it. And these people are thinking this is going to tell us whether she actually practices black magic or not. That's the logic here.
So yeah, it was crazy for like floating audience. It was, you float, you die. You sink, you're not a witch, but you still die. Because most of the victims, most of the people that were convicted of witchcraft that did the trial by water died because of drowning.
Yeah.
And if they did float, they were killed because they were a witch.
Exactly.
So there's no win-win situation in a trial by water.
This is a two-sided coin. Heads, I win. Tails, you're dead. In any case, this is the method by which they had tried people in the past in other places. In Europe, this is a pretty well-known method. And so it was passed down to the colonists in Virginia. But in Virginia, it had never been done to anyone else. Only Grace. Only Grace ever.
In Virginia, in Virginia that was used, But for the witch trials, they did it in 1692 in Salem. Fairies witches were done with water by trial or swimming tests.
Yeah. I believe that in Salem, they did the strap her to the bench thing.
Yeah, they did the strap her to the bench, but they also did the swimming tests for the witches in Salem.
Oh, with the crosswise binding?
Yes.
I believe that's true, yes. What were they doing back then?
So yeah, it was done in America. It was done in America, but it was first time in Virginia that was done.
The only time.
So the only time. But that tells you, audience, that tells you that they have convicted other witches in Virginia at some point in time.
Yes, for sure. They definitely had other witchcraft trials. They just didn't use the water to figure it out then.
Yeah.
At least then they were like talking to each other. This is just a bunch of dudes saying, let's throw her in the river. If she floats, then, she's guilty. That's how we'll know. I just can't wrap my head around that logic. Like, what?
Just think about it nowadays with the, let's just say, flotation devices women have nowadays. They try to do a witch trial by water.
Just imagine her like, let me get my water wings real quick.
She has built-in water wings. If a doctor put them in.
It's a magic device. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, even in the early 1700s, most courts in America, though, had stopped authorizing it. Most courts were saying, no, we don't do that. That's barbaric and it's fucking backwards. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But you got to remember, audience, that it is a rural town. It's not a big city.
Yeah.
Like Salem was, or New York, because there was New York back then and all that. But this was a little town on the outskirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is big now, Virginia Beach.
But it's not anymore, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that big back then.
This is way before Virginia Beach became Virginia Beach, yeah.
Yeah, so it was very small back then. It wasn't, I'm not sure how to say, but it wasn't looked upon, but it wasn't thrown away.
Right. It was just a little rural farming town. It wasn't a big city. There wasn't like a hub or anything. But I mean, in the entire state of Virginia, there's just one known case of an official court-sanctioned trial by water. Any kind of trial by water in Virginia. Just one. So let's talk about what happened to Grace when she got ducked. Isn't that a kind of a fucked up name too? Why are they calling it ducking?
Because the ducks float on water.
Isn't that crazy?
So I guess they consider ducks evil.
Maybe, yeah.
Because the water propelled evil.
Because the water rejects them.
Yeah.
Poor ducks. Ducks haven't done it. Ducks are innocent people. No, ducks are assholes, actually.
Yeah, they are very.
And their dicks are shaped like corkscrews. A fun fact.
You would know that, wouldn't you? You would fucking know that. Wow.
I'm just saying.
You think of that stuff. All right. Good job. All right. Let's continue with the ducking.
On with the ducking. So this ducking happened on July 10th, 1706. Grace Sherwood was marched down the edge of the Lynn Haven River. If you see pictures of the Lynn Haven River, it is a wide, deep river. She was on a beach, okay? And there were likely dozens, could have been upwards of 100 people there to watch, just curious bystanders. There were no benches, no gavels, no records being kept. There was no one taking notes, just a wide river, a bored crowd, and a woman about to be thrown in.
Most likely that was the whole town right there, 100 people.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably the whole town.
Probably, yep.
Yeah.
And their kids. And they probably brought the goats that she had just healed last week or some crazy bullshit like that. Before they did anything else, before they got wet or anything, there was a second examination. They used the same 12 women as they had before, because why not double down on awkward familiarity? Sounds fun. Sounds like colonials like that sort of thing. They're real into it. And this time, the search wasn't private. It happened right there on the shore, in front of her neighbors and the gossipers.
Oh, yeah, at this point, they were just trying to embarrass her as much as they could before they did the ducking.
Yep. Kids were there, sitting on their dad's shoulders. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Dozens of people, maybe over 100. So they strip her down to her linen shift.
At that point right there, the kids were like, Daddy, why does she have that?
Yeah. What are those things on her chest?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really thin, it's shapeless, and it's white, and it's pretty much transparent. I mean, and she's going to go in the water, so they're definitely going to see everything.
It's basically a big teddy. That's what it is, a big
pretty
teddy.
Much, yeah. One that goes like mid-calf. That's all it is. So, I mean,
Or a moo or moo.
Yes, but just imagine it getting wet, and it's going to be a shift, so a very thin moo. You know, colonial modesty. You can't wear pants because we have limits, but public humiliation, no limits there.
Nope.
They weren't looking for new evidence. They were looking for charms. They had these women in front of everyone strip her naked and check her body for amulets, talismans, poppets, any sign that she might try to cheat on the trial, that she might magic her way out of this.
You know, I sit here and I'm wondering if these women had any certification for this, not like paperwork certification, but have they accused people of witchcraft before and looked at the bodies of these women and like, oh yeah, this is what you look for.
Yeah, like how would you know? How do you know what a poppet looks like? Do you have any idea what a poppet looks like?
No, I do not. I don't.
What the fuck?
know.
What is a poppet, right?
Yeah.
I don't, guys, spooks and spookettes, do you guys know what a poppet is?
If you guys do, let us know, please.
Yeah, we'd like to know. If you have a picture of a poppet, I want to know what it looks like, just in case I have to check a witch, and, before we duck her. And so they checked her, and just like before, they found nothing, which didn't matter. No evidence, no problem. We're going to check with water. I mean, they must have been really bored, you know?
Yeah.
Now, I tried this right thumb to left. I told you. I had to see what it was like. You cannot walk. You can't stand upright. And there's no way you're climbing into a boat. So she's on the shore naked. They tie her thumbs to her toes, crosswise.
Okay, so was it frontwards or behind?
Frontwards.
Okay. I see what I see. I have the visual now. All right. So right thumb to left foot, left thumb to right.
Yeah, they got you hunched over.
Okay. I see it.
Yep. And so how did she get in the boat? Because I asked Bones, I was like, how would you get me into a boat to get to the middle of the river this way, And he looked at me, dead ass. He said, like a sack of rice.
Yeah.
Which means they stuck their hands under her armpits and carried her into the boat and plopped her ass in there.
Most likely because she was a witch, they would not want to touch her. Just of the fear of being cursed, they probably stuck a stick in between her armpits and lifted her up like a bucket of water or a sack of potatoes.
Isn't that so fucked?
I'm not saying it is true.
Yeah.
But I'm just going off speculations right now that because they were scared they would get cursed if they touched her physically, they probably just put the stick right between her armpits and lifted her up.
Well, I mean, given the logic we're using for this whole ducking trial, that checks. And then they rowed her to the middle of this river, the Lynnhaven River. It's not a small river. They had the justices following in another boat so that they could witness the outcome of this trial, quote unquote, by water. And then they basically just tossed her over the side. They didn't ease her in. They're not trying to be nice. They're assuming she's going to die. Anyway, they tied a rope around her waist, so when she dies and sinks to the bottom, they can haul her ass back out easily. They're not trying to be safe about it. There was no speech and no final words. The justices were there in their little boat, and the sheriff nodded, and they just dropped her. She disappeared under the surface. The linen floated up around her. For a second, everything was still. And then she came back up.
Oh.
Still bound, her shift clinging to her body, and the rope drifting beside her. She floated.
That's no bueno.
So, guilty. She was guilty.
Yep,
that was all the crowd needed. They saw that, and so in their eyes, they were like, oh, it's true. She made Elizabeth miscarry. Yep.
They're all screaming, witch, witch, witch.
That was the verdict. She must have killed that lady's baby. So they hauled her back to shore and they took her straight to jail. She didn't get a rebuttal. There was no defense, no sentencing. Just a wet dress, a ruined reputation, and the lovely colonial Virginia correctional facilities.
Well, at least they didn't kill her.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, after all of this, I might have been like, yep, you might as well fucking kill me. But yeah, they didn't. They didn't kill her.
But she most likely spent the rest of her life in that jail cell.
We'll talk about what happened while she was in jail.
Oh, okay.
Because Grace is a legend.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, she's epic. The Princess Anne County Jail was right next to the Lynnhaven Parish. Shared the same patch of land, in fact. Because nothing says Christian fellowship like keeping a waterlogged witch next door to Sunday Mass.
Hey, closest to God. That's how they see it.
It's probably safer, right?
Yep.
Because all the black magic and squeezing through keyholes. We don't actually have detailed jail records from 1706, but we know about earlier colonial jails. They were grim.
I like that word. You're trying to put early and colonial together. That's perfect.
Earlier? Yeah.
Yeah, earlier.
It's my word. I coined it. It's going in the fucking dictionary.
Damn straight it is.
So, okay. Colonial jails in 1706. They were pretty gross. No plumbing, no privacy. They threw the women in with the men. Highly unsupervised.
The men liked it, though.
I'm sure the men liked it. There was no supervision. It was just a cramped, airless cell that probably reeked of mold and sweat and whatever passed for disinfectant at the time. Yeah, likely vinegar. That's only assuming like they used vinegar if they bothered to clean anything, which doubtful, yeah. Grace had to sit there probably for years, locked up just a few yards from the church. Can you imagine that?
No, can't imagine that at all.
You get dragged out of a river in front of half the town. They're all gawking at you, and then they stick you in a cell where you can hear them during their Sunday service through the walls every week.
At least she heard the gospel. She was a church person, she heard the gospel.
True, it's true. Although they didn't think she was a church person, obviously, because too many pants. Grace had 3 sons, and they were probably by now young men. They kept farming, and they held on to the land while the whole county whispered about their mother, the witch. But they held on to it, and they worked it. And they weren't prosperous during that time, but they survived. So then Grace was recorded paying her property tax. So we don't have any other records, okay? There's no other records of her incarceration. We can just infer based on what colonial jails were like in that area in that time period. But we do have an official tax document that says Grace paid her property taxes in 1714. All we really can conclude is that she got out that year and she kept her shit together. She got her land back and she went home.
Oh, I want to sue the city.
Right, crazy. But she was legally convicted, you know, 'cause floating. So she didn't go back to delivering babies. She didn't patch up any more sick goats. She definitely didn't remarry. But she also didn't complain about the 8 years of her life that were stolen from her. She just kept to herself. And really, who wouldn't, right? After all that time.
Yeah.
After all that humiliation and torture. And she was just like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. So she wasn't the outspoken Grace Sherwood that she was before she went to jail. But I'm sure a jail like that's going to change you.
Oh, yeah, big time.
The only thing is, even though she went into a quiet, like, reclusive life, the town never stopped watching her. And they never stopped whispering. She became a folklore. They said she walked at noon and cast no shadow, that foxes followed her in the woods, and even one of the neighbors said that they saw her talking to the animals, and the animals were talking back.
Man, today people will get so bad talking to their dogs and their cats and all that. Oh my God, there'd be so many witch hunts.
Oh my God, but I'm saying like the neighbor says that the animals were talking back to her. Doesn't that say more about the neighbor than it does about Grace?
Yeah.
But whatever. Oh, farmers said that crops withered if she passed too close to their fields. Ridiculous.
Yeah, big time.
So she didn't just come back. She came back different. At least in their minds, something was different about her. Obviously, something was different about her. You just threw her in a shithole for 8 years. And you know, in colonial prisons, if you don't have somebody bribing the guards for you, you get no basic water. They give you slop. They don't give you like nutritious food or anything. So she was probably real sick. But I mean, she survived. And so she became a legend. Grace Sherwood died around 1740, which means she was probably in her 80s, which means that was a bad bitch.
Yeah, it was, definitely.
Because in today's day and age, somebody in their 80s in colonial time is like 150 now. No one recorded how she died. And when she was buried, no one marked her grave. But her sons kept the land. And so did the rest of her descendants for several generations, long enough for them to become part of the oral tradition of her storytelling. I just lost my place.
Don't do that.
It happens all the time because my brain doesn't work like it's supposed to normally work, okay?
It happens to us sometimes.
I'm thinking. I had a thought and I lost it. Oh, on that same patch of land, that's where her body is.
Oh, nice.
We just don't know exactly where. She held on to that shit. And she saved it for her kids, and her family passed it down through generations. And she's still there.
Awesome.
Right?
Yep.
Because she's epic. Grace is epic. For centuries after that, she was remembered as a folklore legend. They called her the Witch of Pungo.
The Witch of Pungo?
Uh-huh. And there's a book called Grace Sherwood, The Witch of Pungo. She was a mysterious and sometimes menacing figure that people whispered about in Virginia Beach legend. Her name lived on. She's got street signs. I mean, there's ghost stories about her. There's definitely oral tradition to the locals that have been there, the older families. They never found the exact location of her grave, which I think is good. I think that her sons protected it so that people wouldn't come and like do crazy shit and try to do a seance or whatever. But the coolest part about her legacy is that in 2006, now that is 300 years after her trial by water, the Virginia Governor Tim Kaine issued an informal pardon for Grace Sherwood. He acknowledged that she had been wrongfully accused and punished, and the pardon came after efforts by local historians, advocates, and the Ferry Plantation House Foundation, who are pretty well-known activists. They pushed for official recognition of the injustice she suffered because her story was so big. She was the only woman ever tried by water in Virginia since the history of Virginia. So what happened was, eventually, she was pardoned, and eventually, to commemorate her legacy, a big-ass bronze statue of Grace is erected near the Centara Independence Hospital in Virginia Beach.
Get it.
Yep.
Get it, girl.
Still there today, close to the original site of her ducking. The statue was created by an artist called Robert Cunningham, and it was unveiled on July 10th of 2007. It marked the 301st anniversary of the actual ducking. The statue depicts Grace. She's barefoot, as usual. I'm really sad that she's not in pants, but they didn't want to go too far outside of traditional colonial.
Oh, they should have. Put her in pants.
They should have put her in pants. I think she deserved to wear her goddamn pants, okay?
Mm-hmm.
She's standing there with a basket of herbs in her arm to symbolize her skills with healing and the herbs. And at her feet is a little raccoon. It's really cute because they put that raccoon in there to symbolize her affinity with the animals, and she was so well known for healing the animals. But so many people mistake it for a black cat. And if you see, I'm going to post a picture of this statue in our Instagram feed. But if you see this, there's no fucking way that looks like a black cat unless it's a really like deformed black cat. But people are saying black cat obviously because witch. So it's still happening. It's still happening today. People are still saying, oh, she's a witch. That must be a black cat. Really, it's just a raccoon. She loved the forest animals. The whole statue was designed and deliberately chosen to reflect her connection to the natural world, her love of animals. Because for so long she was portrayed as a villain, but she really was just a healer and a survivor, and apparently she could swim.
Yep. What human can't float? That's my question.
I'm just saying, realistically, it was such an illogical trial. And the outcome was, we're going to throw you in jail because you know how to float, because you're too smart to just drown. Each July in that community, in what is now Virginia Beach, in that same area, the community hosts reenactments of her ducking, which I had mentioned earlier. It's organized by the Ferry Plantation House and some local volunteers from the town, usually people from the old families who have kept the oral tradition of telling Grace's story. The events are educational and pretty symbolic, but like I said, they really lean into her as a folk hero, and as, just a quirky, like hippie type woman. But the truth is that people hated her for so long. She had such a miserable life.
I can only imagine. That was just prisoned.
Yeah. Well, first people whispering about her and saying all these crazy things about her and saying, well, she turns into a cat and she squeezed into my keyhole. And, just crazy shit. Like, she made me get fat. Like, all that crazy shit. Like, I think that needs to be brought home. How long she suffered. And then she was ducked in a river and then imprisoned for 8 years. And then she went back to town and was completely ostracized because people thought she was a witch. But I guess it has good intentions because it's intended to reflect on how fear and power can distort justice. It doesn't matter though, because Grace Sherwood didn't burn. She didn't drown. She didn't even fucking die. She endured. And in the end, she became more than a legend. She became a reminder about a woman who just wouldn't go under.
That's right, Grace. Be powerful.
Get it, Grace. We're right behind you, Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for wading through the past with us.
If you like this episode of Spookology, tell your friends or your enemies or that one guy that still insists she floated because of witchcraft and not basic human buoyancy.
You can find us on Spotify, Instagram, Coffee, Patreon, and Facebook. Just search Spookology Podcast. We'll pop up like a raccoon in your herb garden. Or just check the links in the show notes.
Every follow, tip, and share helps us keep digging up the strange, the haunted, and the historically cursed.
Until next time, watch your step near the river. Some women float and some rise.